What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I got my wife Tanya sitting in with me today. What's going on, baby cakes? But anyway, you know what? We're going to do something a little bit different today. We're gonna tell a story, and we're gonna call this the untold story, or the story never told, which you know. This story dates back to, I believe, 2002 or 2003. And there's only a few people that know this story, and those people are the few of my buddies that actually fish this tournament. Of course, I had to tell everybody that I knew after the tournament was over what happened during the day. But as you listen to this story, I will tell you everything I'm about to tell you is 100% accurate, true. I should know. I lived it. Now it's going to feel, you're going to listen to this and you're going to say, man, he is the best storyteller in the world. But this story is true, 100% accurate. The story dates back to 2000, I think it was 2003. Now, at that time, I was fishing tournaments, but I was only fishing a club tournament. Back in 2003, I haven't yet fished any bigger events like the BFLs or anything like that. Pretty much my experience was all centered around club tournament. And in 2003, a few of my buddies that actually fished the club as well, they have been fishing the BFLs on the boater side. Well, back then, all the BFLs, of course, just like they are today in Florida, the Gator Division today, is on Okeechobee. Well, back then, I didn't know Okeechobee that well. And I wanted to fish something a little bit bigger than club events, but I didn't think in my eyes I was quite ready yet. I didn't know the lake near like I know it today. But what's so funny? Hey, come on, man.
I'm like, what is this story? I can't wait to hear it.
The funny thing about the story is this happened, but me and Tanya got married in 2007. So this story happened like 4 or 5 years before we met. So I don't even think I ever told Tanya the story. So we're going to have some reaction out of Tanya because she has never heard this story before. But anyway, 2003 BFL. They talked me into going in on the non-boater side. Of course, in my eyes, I wasn't ready yet to go as a boater. And I kind of figured too, going as a non-boater, of course, that's one of the reasons you typically when you start out as a non-boater, because usually you're going to be fishing on the back of somebody's boat that knows a little bit about what they're doing, knows the lake, good fisherman. And the BFL typically, even today, and back then as well, it consisted of probably 98% of the field in the BFL is pretty good fishermen. It's all made up of guides and really, really good tournament anglers. Now, there's 2% of that field that, well, quite honestly, they shouldn't be a boater on the front of the boat in a tournament. Okay, and you guys that's either fished on non-boater side before or as boaters kind of know what I'm talking about. When you're a non-boater, it's all about the luck of the draw, but there's a lot better percentage that you'll draw someone that's pretty darn good than someone that's not. So anyway, getting back to the story, I worked Friday. The pre-tournament meeting is always on Fridays, or Friday evening before, the tournament's on Saturday. And back then, they had the pre-tournament meetings at the Okeechobee High School in the auditorium. So the thing about the first tournament of the year with the BFLs, is that at that time, at that time it was the Everstart Series, was a week later, and the FLW Tour was 2 weeks later. So all three levels in the FLW was within 3 weeks apart. So the Everstart didn't have any off limits. So a lot of, there goes Baby Kate's phone. That's all right. We can call him back, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, lost my train of thought. The Everstart had no off limits. So a lot of the Everstart guys would get into the BFLs. All right, call them back. A lot of the Everstart guys. All right, guys, we're gonna clip this. We're gonna answer that real quick, and we'll be right back.
You can keep going.
All right, we're back.
I got my boots on for this story.
Temporary delay. Your ringer turned off, by the way. Now.
Yeah.
It is now, right? Okay. All right, but anyway, the Everstart. I'm trying to catch my train of thought here where I was. A lot of the Everstart guys jumped into the BFL because it was an extra day on the water for them, and on the Everstart side, if they did not fish the BFL, they couldn't be on the water that day. So in order for them to still be able to be on the water during the day that the BFL was happening, they had to fish the BFL. As far as the tour side's concerned, tour was off limits 30 days prior to the first day of practice. But they had a specific rule in the tour rules that they allowed the FLW tour anglers to fish the BFL as well. But if they were not fishing the BFL, it was still off limits to them. So a lot of your tour guys came down a little bit early to fish the BFL because it was an extra day of practice for them on the water that they wouldn't get if they didn't get involved with the BFL as well. But anyway, let's get back to the story. I went to the pre-tournament meeting Friday night at the high school, and after the pre-tournament meeting was over, of course, FLW text you, or text everybody, the boaters and non-boaters, the phone numbers and the names and the contact information for whoever they're paired with. So I got my text, and on the way back to the house, I was actually staying with my buddies. They had a house down there, so I was staying with them guys. And on the way back, I decided I was going to call the guy that I got paired with. Well, anyway, here's where the story starts getting a little bit on the crazy side. All right, called the guy, and the phone rings. He answers. Now I'm not gonna change his whole name. I'm gonna change part of his name. So, and this is to protect the guilty, if you know what I mean. But anyway, guy answered the phone. I says, hey, Norman, my name's Norman. I'm going to be your co-angler tomorrow. And this is the response I get back. Well, what's going on? My name is Hillbilly Thompson, but you could just call me Hillbilly. Okay. And part of that name was changed. Quite frankly, I don't want him to get in trouble if he's still around. So.
Well, if he talked like that.
But anyway, let's put it this way: Hillbilly was not changed. Okay, now we made arrangements to meet at his house in the morning. I was going to leave my truck there, and we're going to drive to the ramp. He lived really close to the ramp. So anyway, I got to his house. He was still drinking his coffee. He was driving a white van. And his boat was an old Ranger. It looked like probably one of the prototypes that Forrest L. Wood made when he first built the Ranger back in the early 60s. But anyway, we got in his van to head to the ramp in the morning, and he went to turn the key, and click, nothing. Click, nothing. I'm thinking, oh crap, this guy's battery's dead in his van. So the guy gets out, and I says, everything gonna be good? He says, yeah, it won't take me about a second to get this thing started. I said, do you need any help? He goes, nah, that's fine, I got it. So he gets out, and he doesn't lift the hood. He just he disappears below the hood of the van. I'm still sitting in the passenger seat. So I actually get out and walk around to kind of see what he's doing. And he has two black coated wires that's actually coming out of the front of his hood where it comes over top of his headlights where it locks down, and two bare wires or black insulated wires, but there's about a 1/2 inch of wire stripped on the ends of them, just loose hanging there in front of the headlight. Well, needless to say, this guy picks them two wires up and he touches them together. They spark, and the van starts up. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, geez, what did I get myself into? He literally hot wired his van with two bare wires hanging in front of his headlights. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I
Was
said,
it stolen?
nah, I don't know. But anyway, I'm like, this has happened to this guy before. So anyway, we get to the ramp, everything's good. Now that day it's actually blowing about 20 miles an hour, 25 miles an hour. And if you know anything about Okeechobee, all it has to be doing is blowing about 10 to 15 miles an hour, and you have major whitecaps coming across the lake, depending on what way the wind's blowing. So I asked the guy, I said, where are we going to go? And the tournament was actually going out of the Kissimmee River. Back then it was Okeechobee. Most of the bigger tournaments didn't go out of where they go out of Scott Driver today. Back then they all went out of Okeechobee, which is right across the road from where Scott Driver Park is. So anyway, I asked him where we're going. He said, well, we're going to Clewiston. I said, oh, okay. And I knew the wind was blowing right from that direction, blowing right in on the side where we're going out of. So I'm like, I said, well, we're gonna hug the edge going around, right, all the way around. You know, hugging the edge when it's blowing hard like that, and especially in an old 18-foot boat like he had, you'd probably make it around quicker hugging the edge than trying to run right across into it. So the guy's reply to me was, nope, we're going across. So I'm like, oh crap.
Was this guy old or young?
He was probably in his 60s. Yeah, he wasn't that old, but he wasn't that young neither. But anyway, we're on the water. We're getting ready for our number to be called, and the wind's blowing about 20 miles an hour right from the direction where we're going to be heading. So anyway, we get our number called, and we start going against it. And let me tell you something. This guy has his... He has his motor trimmed as high up as he has his motor trimmed in the position where if it was flat as glass and he was scatting across. I mean, we were porpoising. I was getting sprayed with water. My spine was going up through my neck. And so
I know that feeling.
we get halfway across. And all of a sudden I heard the motor start to spit and sputter. Halfway across and the motor stops. I'm like, holy cow. We're going to disappear. They're going to be sending search parties out after us. But anyway, I look over at him. I say, you know, what's going on, dude? I said, and he looks over at me and he says, no worries. Just take me a couple minutes. It's the same thing he told me when he started his van up in the morning. No worries. Take me a couple minutes. So I'm like, oh, crap. Anyway, he climbs up on the back deck. And I'm actually watching him over my shoulder, and I'm waiting for him to lose his balance and fall overboard because we're actually being tossed around with 3-footers. I mean, that boat is just being tossed around. It's almost like he's going to overturn on every other wave. So anyway, he pulls the cowling off, and he turns around. He hands me the cowling. He says, here, put this in your lap. So now I have a big 150 horsepower cowling sitting in my lap. And I look back over my shoulder. And he has 2 black wires coming out of the top of his flywheel, hanging loose under the cowling.
No
and the ends of them are shaved. The same as the van. I'm like, holy shit.
Goodness.
Anyway, he touches 2 wires. His motor starts up. He touches it. He literally hot wires his outboard. Have no clue how he done it, how them wires were connected, but he touched them 2 wires, they sparked, and that motor turned over, that flywheel started turning, and that motor started. I'm like, holy crap. So anyway, we start going across again, and I had this big cowling in my lap. Now I'm having this cowling beating me up. Not only the water, I'm getting pounded, but I have this cowling keep hitting me in the chest. Every time we come off a wave, and he is literally porpoising all the way across that lake. So anyway, we get halfway. We go probably another 10 minutes, it does it again. So anyway, it happens twice before we get to the other side, where he actually has to climb back on the back deck and hot wire his outboard to start it.
It's
I'm
why
like,
the water wasn't coming in all over his motor.
I don't know, but anyway, we get across. We pull up into this canal. And again, back then, I knew nothing about lake. I didn't even know where we were. We were somewhere between Clewiston and Moorhaven. And we pull up in a canal over there, and we start fishing. And we've been there for about an hour. And neither of us has had a bite caught. And this canal is only wide enough to get two boats side by side idling past each other. And on the sides of the canal, it has buggy whips and bulrush that stick out probably 10 foot outside where the hard bank is on this canal. So he basically had me shoved all the way back up in the bulrush, and I only had one angle I could throw. If I threw sideways off the side of the boat, I'd be throwing straight into the grass. That's how far back he had me pushed up in the weeds. So anyway, we're there an hour, and neither of us has had a bite, and he has not moved 1 inch with his trolling motor. We sat. He had me pushed back in the same reed head that we were in when we first got there, and this is like an hour and 20 minutes later. So anyway, we're not moving. We're just sitting there randomly casting dead water. So about 2 hours goes by and haven't seen a soul, and all of a sudden I see off in the distance a competitor's boat. It's a fully wrapped boat. I'm assuming it was probably one of the tour competitors. Fully wrapped boat. It looked like he knew what he was doing, but he was fishing, and he had stopped fishing about 50 to 75 yards before he got to us, and he was gonna just troll past and then continue fishing when he got by us. Well, back then there was, I don't think it's enforced or in the rule books too much anymore, but back then there was a rule. Most club tournaments had this rule in the club. I mean, it was a pretty common rule, no matter what level you were fishing back then. In the BFL, the Everstar, the tour events, all levels had this rule in the rule book, and that rule was trolling motor up, anchor deployed. Competitor's boat had to stay 50 yards from another competitor with his trolling motor in the stow position with his anchor down. Okay, that was a rule that most tournaments had back then. So this guy's probably about 25 yards from us now, and he had stopped fishing. Him and his co-angler. He probably turned around and told his co-angler to stop fishing. We're just going to kind of troll ourselves by and continue when we get past him. So Hillbilly, in my boat, runs to the cockpit, and he starts digging through his locker. He's pulling stuff out. He grabs an anchor out of his locker. And at this point, I kind of know what he's going to be doing and what kind of crap this guy's going to pull. So anyway, he walks up on the front deck with the anchor. He drops it straight over the side, ties it off to his cleat, and he pulls his trolling motor up. And I'm like, oh shit. Shit's about to hit the fan here in a couple minutes. So anyway, the guy gets almost even with him, and he's just on the trolling motor, just trolling by, not fishing in front of him or nothing. So Hillbilly goes, oh, you're a freaking asshole. I'm like, holy shit, what did this guy just say? And evidently, the guy in the other boat, too, must have said the same thing as me. What did this guy just say? Because his reply was, excuse me? And Hillbilly tells him again, you're a freaking asshole. I'm like, oh my god. Right now, I'm actually eyeballing his rod locker, sizing it up, seeing if it's going to be big enough for me to open and put my body. I wanted to crawl in something, and that rod locker was pretty much about my size. So anyway, I couldn't believe he said that and what he was doing. And the guy had no other choice but to go by us. There's no way around us. And to pull that, I'm like, oh my goodness. So anyway, the war words kind of subside a little bit. He gets about, 30 feet past us, 30, 40 feet past us. And the war words has stopped. And Hillbilly reaches down and he picks up a rattle trap on a rod that he has laying alongside of him. And he chunks it as hard as he could. That rattle trap lands about 1.5 feet from the back of this other guy's boat after it was already done. And the war word starts up again. Another 10 minutes they're going back at it, and I'm like, there's going to be a fight here in a couple minutes. And my bet is on the guy in the other boat, because my dad used to tell me an old saying. He was built like a beep beep house, if you know what I mean. I don't know if I should say that on camera or not, but a brick, you know what house.
Norman.
And guy looked like he hit the weight room pretty frequently. So I'm like, oh my goodness. But anyway, it stopped. But anyway, get back to the fishing. Okay. after it was time to run back to the weigh-in, of course, we had to go back with the waves now, and it never settled down. It was long the same, but a little bit easier ride going back when you're going with it versus against it. So anyway, he ended up having a limit with 5 fish that 5 12-inch fish. I think his 5 fish limit weighed about 4 pounds. 5 12-inch fish. I didn't have a fish. But anyway, I will tell you one thing. That day, we did not move. We sat there 8 hours. We were fishing in the same 10-foot square piece of property that we shut down on in the morning. Wow. And he had me backed up into that reed head all day long. And he did not put his foot on that trolling motor to actually even work down the bank. We sat there, and he must have made 2,000 casts within about 20 foot of each other in 8 hours all day long. And he ended up squeaking 5 12-inches out of there. I'm like, man, this was a wasted day. But, we got back. I signed his weigh-in slip. I was really I didn't want to say anything, start any trouble. All I wanted to do was leave and go home. So anyway, it was over with. Kind of hung out at the weigh-in a little bit. Kind of told all my buddies that fished the tournament as well. They were all on the boater side, and everybody kind of knew the guy that I was paired with. I guess he had a pretty good reputation. But anyway, that, I sit back and look at it today, and I really, it's the funniest thing I've ever experienced. And I'll laugh today, but back then, when it was actually happening, it was the most frustrated I think I've ever been on the water. I'll tell you what, one thing too, it almost... Of course, at that time, fishing wasn't my career. I had a normal job back then. I was working at Lake Placid Marine, running the showroom at Lake Placid Marine back then. But it almost ruined my, eventual career because I was ready to quit the club. I had such a bad experience that day. I was ready to quit fishing, period. I mean, it just almost ruined me, the experience I had with this guy. But anyway, you know what? And that leads me to the wrap up of this story. I'm gonna give a little bit of advice to all the up and coming anglers out there that wanna fish something bigger. The MLF BFL, which today's MLF BFL, back then it was FLW, is MLF BFL. That is the best platform to gain experience, and now my experience was 1 in a million. Again, when you fish as a co-angler, it's the luck of the draw, but I guarantee you'll have a lot better odds pairing yourself up with somebody that actually knows what they're doing, that you could fish behind and learn something behind, than the experience I had. But I highly recommend fishing as a co-angler. You'll gain a lot of good experience, and there's a lot better percentage you're gonna actually be drawn with somebody that actually knows what they're doing, and you could actually learn a lot from the guy in the front of the boat. But anyway, I'm gonna leave it at that. I hope you enjoyed the story.
But you don't get to choose your captain. They draw your name.
No, it's a random draw done by it's all computerized.
So you didn't pick this guy out.
No, that's what I said. It's the luck of the draw. Anytime you fish the BFL or any bigger tournament like that, it's always a random draw done by computers, and it's the luck of the draw. But like I say, my experience was 1 in probably a million chances to actually have that happen.
I would have pushed him overboard and finished it catching fish.
I couldn't do that because then we'd both be disqualified. But anyway, I'm gonna leave it at that. But guys, I hope you enjoyed the story. And let me tell you, everything you heard in the story is 100% true, accurate to the T, because I lived it. So guys, what do you think, baby? Ready to wrap this up?
Yeah.
Guys, tight lines, and guys, until
next...
And
Hillbilly, if you're watching this, hey!
Yeah, that's right. But anyway, tight lines, guys, and we'll see all y'all on the water.